As dawn broke over Ajwain, Manu stood in the rebel camp's makeshift laboratory, frustration etched on his face. The limited supplies and crude equipment were woefully inadequate for the task at hand. He turned to Yayati, who watched him with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "I can't work like this," Manu said, his voice tight. "Without my notes and proper herbs, I'm working blind. We're wasting precious time." Yayati's eyes narrowed. "And how do you propose we get these things? Walk into the upper city and ask politely?" Manu hesitated, then spoke carefully. "There might be a way. My wife, Priya, she could help." Rohini, who had been silently observing, tensed at the mention of Priya's name. "Your wife? And why would she risk everything to help rebels?" "Because she cares about all of Ajwain, not just the upper city," Manu replied, a hint of defensiveness in his voice. "And she'll want to know I'm safe." Yayati considered this for a long moment. "It's risky, but if it works..." He turned to Rohini. "What do you think?" Rohini's face was unreadable. "I think it's a terrible idea, but we're running out of options." Yayati nodded. "Very well, but we do this carefully. You'll write a letter, Manu. We'll have it delivered discreetly." In the upper city, Priya paced in Manu's study, dark circles under her eyes betraying her sleepless nights. A soft knock at the door made her jump. "My lady," a servant whispered, "this was left for you." He handed her a small, nondescript package. With trembling hands, Priya opened it to find a letter in Manu's familiar handwriting. As she read, her eyes widened with a mix of relief and fear. "My dearest Priya, I am safe, but I cannot return home yet. The situation is more complex than we realized. I need your help. Please gather my notes on the plague and the herbs listed below. Leave them at our old meeting spot in the garden at midnight. Trust no one else with this. I'm sorry for putting you in this position. Know that everything I do is to save our city, all of it." With love and regret, Manu Priya clutched the letter to her chest, her mind racing. She knew helping Manu could be seen as treason, but the thought of abandoning him was unbearable. With a deep breath, she made her decision. Under the cover of darkness, Priya crept through the upper city gardens, a satchel clutched tightly to her chest. As she approached the designated spot, her heart pounding, a figure emerged from the shadows. Priya gasped, her eyes widening in shock as she recognized the woman before her. "Rohini," she whispered, disbelief coloring her voice. You're alive?" Rohini stepped into the moonlight, her face a mask of caution and determination. "I am, though I'm sure our father would prefer I wasn't." Priya's mind reeled, trying to reconcile the half-sister she'd heard whispers about. The exiled healer, the rebel, the woman from Manu's past, with the flesh and blood person standing before her. "All these years," Priya breathed, "I thought you were dead. Father says a lot of things." Rohini cut her off, her voice sharp. "Not all of them true." Priya's shock gave way to a surge of emotions, confusion, anger, and a strange sense of longing for the sister she never knew. "Why are you here? Where is my husband?" Rohini's expression softened slightly, recognizing the genuine concern in Priya's voice. "He's safe for now. Do you have what he asked for?" Priya hesitated, her hand tightening on the satchel she carried. This encounter was nothing like she'd imagined, and she found herself torn between duty to the upper city, her concern for Manu, and a newfound curiosity about the half-sister. "I do," Priya said finally, holding out the satchel. "But I need to know, is Manu helping you willingly?" Rohini took the satchel, her eyes never leaving Priya's face. complicated, but know this. What he's doing could save countless lives in both the upper and lower city. Priya's voice cracked with emotion. There's something you should know. The council, they suspect Manu of treason. They think he's betrayed the upper city. Rohini's eyes narrowed. And what do you believe? Priya straightened, a newfound determination in her eyes. I believe in Manu. Whatever he's doing, I know it's for the good of all Ajwain. I've decided to stand by his side, no matter the cost. Rohini studied Priya for a long moment, a flicker of respect crossing her face. That's a dangerous decision, sister. Are you sure you're prepared for the consequences? I am, Priya replied, her voice steady. Rohini nodded slowly, then asked softly, Tell me something, sister. Do you love him? Manu? Priya's eyes widened at the unexpected question. For a moment she was silent, her gaze dropping to the ground as she considered her answer. When she looked up again, there was a new resolve in her eyes. I do, Priya said finally. Priya admitted softly. I always have, even though our marriage was arranged. It may have started as duty, but Manu is a good man. He cares deeply for others, for all of Ajwain. How could I not love him? Rohini nodded, a flicker of understanding passing across her face. Then stand by him, Priya. He'll need your strength in the days to come. She paused, then added, Be careful, sister, and thank you. With that, Rohini melted back into the shadows, leaving Priya alone with her tumultuous thoughts and the weight of her decision. Back in the rebel camp, Manu pored over his notes, mixing tinctures with renewed purpose. Rohini entered the lab, her face troubled. Your wife, she cares for you deeply, more than I expected. Manu's expression softened. Priya has always been kind. She doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of this. A moment of awkward silence fell between them. Manu, feeling a need to bridge the gap, hesitantly spoke. Rohini, do you ever think about the night before I left for the upper city? The promises we made? Rohini's body tensed, visibly, her eyes flashing with sudden anger. Don't, she said, her voice low and dangerous. Don't you dare bring that up now. Manu, realizing his mistake too late, tried to backtrack. I just thought... You thought what? Rohini snapped, her earlier composure cracking. That we could reminisce about the good old days? That I'd forgotten how you broke every single one of those promises? Manu's jaw clenched. It wasn't like that. I had no choice. There's always a choice, Manu, Rohini cut him off, her voice sharp with years of pent-up hurt and anger. You chose to leave. You chose to forget about us, about me. You don't get to waltz back in here and pretend nothing's changed. The tension in the room was palpable. Manu opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Yayati's voice cut through the air. That's enough, he said firmly, stepping into view. He fixed Manu with a hard stare. Rohini, give us a moment. Rohini hesitated, then nodded curtly and left the room, her anger still evident in the set of her shoulders. Yayati turned to Manu, his eyes blazing with a mix of protectiveness and barely contained fury. You have no idea what she's been through. After your betrayal, do you? Manu flinched at the word betrayal. Yayati, No, Yayati cut him off. You don't get to explain. You don't get to justify. Do you know what happened to her after you left? The exile, the struggles, the pain she endured? Manu's face paled as Yayati continued, his voice low and intense. Rohini has sacrificed everything for our cause, for the people you abandoned. She's been through hell and back, and yet here she is, still fighting, still caring. Yayati's fists clenched at his sides, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I've watched her rebuild herself from the ashes you left behind. I've seen her strength, her resilience, and I swear, if you hurt her again—" The threat hung in the air, unfinished but clear. Manu swallowed hard, seeing for the first time the depth of Yayati's feelings for Rohini. "I never meant to hurt her," Manu said softly. "But you're right. I don't know what she's been through. I'm sorry." Yayati's gaze didn't waver. "Your apologies mean nothing. Your actions from here on out are what matter. Remember that." Before Manu could fully process the confrontation, a commotion outside drew their attention. A rebel burst into the lab, panic in his eyes. "The governor's forces," he gasped. "They're preparing for a major assault on the lower city. We have reports of new weapons, something that spreads the plague faster than ever." Manu, Rohini, and Yayati exchanged grim looks. The race against time had just become deadlier than ever. Manu's brow furrowed in concentration. "There might be a way," he said slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "A flower, the mountain star bloom. It's rare, but its properties could significantly speed up the development of a cure." Rohini's eyes widened in recognition. "The star bloom? But that only grows in the secluded mountainside to the north," Manu finished. "I know, it's dangerous, possibly suicidal given the current situation, but it might be our only chance to get ahead of this new threat." Yayati, who had been listening intently, stepped forward. "I know those mountains. The terrain is treacherous, and the area is known to be patrolled by the governor's elite forces. But—" He paused, his eyes meeting Rohini's for a brief moment. "If it's our only chance, we have to take it." Rohini nodded, her earlier anger at Manu momentarily forgotten in the face of this new challenge. "We'll need a small team. Any larger, and we risk detection." "Agreed," Yayati said. "Manu, you'll need to come to identify the flower. Rohini, your skills as a healer will be crucial if anyone is injured. I'll lead the expedition." Manu looked between Yayati and Rohini, surprise evident on his face. "You're both willing to risk this, even after everything?" Rohini's expression hardened. "This isn't about you, Manu. It's about saving Ajwain. All of it. Personal feelings don't matter in the face of that." Yayati nodded in agreement. "We leave at first light. Gather only what's essential. This journey will test us all." As the rebel camp settled for the night, Rohini found herself unable to sleep, her mind racing with thoughts of the day's events. She slipped out of her tent and made her way to the edge of the camp, seeking solitude. To her surprise, she found Yayati already there, staring out into the darkness. Rohini paused, taking in his profile, silhouetted against the night sky. Her eyes traced the strong line of his jaw, the set of his broad shoulders, and the way the moonlight caught in his hair. Yayati turned at her approach, catching her gaze. For a moment, amusement flickered in his eyes, and Rohini felt heat rise to her cheeks, embarrassed at being caught staring. She quickly looked away, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Couldn't sleep either?" Yayati asked softly, his expression shifting to a more guarded one. Rohini shook her head, moving to stand beside him. "No," she admitted. "Too much on my mind." For a moment, they stood in silence. The weight of their responsibilities momentarily lifted. Rohini was acutely aware of Yayati's presence, the warmth radiating from him in the cool night air. "I keep thinking about what's coming," Rohini said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The governor's new weapons, the plague, and Manu's return. Sometimes it feels like we're fighting a losing battle." Yayati turned to face her, his eyes filled with a mixture of determination and something deeper, yet carefully controlled. As long as we have people like you, Rohini, we'll never truly lose. Your strength, your dedication, it gives hope to all of us. Rohini felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words, her heart quickening. I couldn't do any of this without you, Yayati. Your leadership, your unwavering belief in our cause. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to fade away. But Yayati remained still, his posture rigid, as if holding himself back. Whatever comes, he said softly, his voice tinged with a hint of regret, we'll face it together, as comrades, as leaders of our people.